I mean, this comet has been driving me crazy. I want to watch it, but you can't see the skies. I've been going up every night to the terrace, and bloody hell, clouds are there. This
Yeah.
new ice comet, I hate it. It's going to come next in when I'm 8,758 years old. Yeah, it's starting.
Finally.
Streaming live. It's streaming live. Let's go. Yeah, let's go. The pandemic is raging, infections are climbing, as are the recoveries, and there seems to be no end in sight as far as the SARS-CoV-2 virus is concerned. It continues its rampage and looks unstoppable. Also, it seems. However, one person who had been riding some good tailwinds despite the pandemic is Sameer Nair. The CEO of the Kumaramangalam-backed Applause Entertainment has been on steroids ever since he was charged with running the studio, which had produced Black and a few other forgotten shows. He was given the mandate in 2017. But he's been on steroids, as I said, ever since. And his efforts have borne fruit. Up to date, he's delivered around 15 shows to streamers, with another half a dozen set to release soon, and a dozen or so under development. That's some gee-whiz growth. Not many may know, but Nair was planning to make waves in catering, making sandwiches in his younger days, but fortune decreed otherwise, and he went on to follow his true passion, that of telling stories and following history and making history. A voracious reader, he's the guy you turn to figure out what book to pick up next. He looks like a geek, but he's not your average Joe. His mind is like a sponge, constantly on the move, delving deep into almost everything, asking questions, wanting to learn and expand his knowledge. And he's a brilliant writer himself, though he has not penned a script himself. Not that I know of. Maybe we'll find out if he is. We'll ask him that directly. Over the next hour or so and a half that he has given us, we'll be talking to Sameer Nair, the content pioneer then, and the creative disruptor now. Hi, I'm Anil Vanvari here, the founder, CEO, and editor-in-chief of the 20-year-old Indian Television.com group, which runs successful properties such as India's leading cable, satellite, DTH, OTT, advertising, marketing, and media B2B platform, and news and information service, IndianTelevision.com, India's leading TV fan and OTT platform, Telechakkar.com. We generate close to 1 billion views a year from 100 million unique viewers on Telechakkar. India's largest FM radio and music B2B and B2C destination, radioandmusic.com, and the world's third largest animation, visual effects, comics, and gaming destination, animationexpress.com. This apart, we produce India's oldest and most popular, the Indian Tele Award, which recognizes performance on and off the screen. We also are behind the Content Hub, which is the largest gathering of content creators for television, film, OTT, and video, and short form video. We also produce Brandwid, the Media and HR Summit, the Video and Broadband Summit, among several other properties in the physical and phygital forms. So most of these have moved on to digital ever since the pandemic has hit us and the lockdown has been upon us. We also handle below-the-line brand activation for a handful of national brands. On to Sameer. Sameer, good to have you on this Fireside Chat.
Hi, Anil. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for that very kind introduction. Happy to be here. Happy to chat with you.
Thank you. So we titled this Fireside Chat as Content Pioneer then, Creative Disruptor now. Have we depicted you rightly? Do you consider yourself a content pioneer? Do you believe you're disrupting creatively?
Well, actually, you've been kind, and I must thank you for that, because, all these labels and sort of, designations and sort of, descriptors we get are always very complimentary and very nice. And it feels good to hear that, obviously. And I look at it in that light, I say, wow, that sounds nice. Maybe I am that person. But I think it's also, I've had a long career. I've been in this business for a long time. I think I got into the sort of, media and entertainment business in the late 80s. And I've been, sort of doing stuff since then. I've been a sort of a content creator and a content maker from a very early days. I used to do advertising films. I used to do corporate documentaries. I moved on to TV much, much earlier. I spent some time in Chennai doing TV. Most people don't know that I've actually made a precursor of an Amul India show for Chennai Doordarshan. Like I've done a lot of that kind of stuff. Then I came to Star. I spent many years in Star before the famous KVC happened, producing a lot of interstitial content for, Bollywood and, for television. So yeah, I've done a lot of work. I enjoy doing this stuff. So about being a pioneer, I was lucky enough, I guess, to be, part of the industry at a pioneering phase of the industry. It was early days in that industry. TV was growing. We started from, a few thousand TV homes to now 200 million TV homes. So I've been sort of lucky to have been part of that. I've been lucky to have worked with great companies, great people, and I've been sort of fortunate to do some stuff. And I've been continuing to do it. So yeah, we did a lot of pioneering stuff. Whether I'm the pioneer or not is a different matter. But yes, I think Indian television per se has done a lot of smart pioneering things, and I have been part of some of those.
What about the creative disruptive part now?
Well, at this point, it's for me. It's in many ways, it's sort of a natural evolution of what I've always been. So what I'm doing today with Applause is something I always wanted to do. I wanted to do this in the late '90s, and I was like quite determined at that time that I would now set out and set up my own creative content studio, and I would create content, do movies, do series, do all types of content formats. But life took me in a different direction, and I instead became a senior media executive, and sort of which turned out okay as well. So there's no sort of regrets or anything to any of that. So this is something I've always wanted to do, as in create to build this sort of ecosystem. Because this is something what I really love doing. I love telling stories. I love creating content. I love working with creative people. As you know, our business is a collaborative art form, and it takes a lot of moving parts to finally create what you see on screen. And I like doing that. I genuinely enjoy that. I enjoy working with creative people. So I'm having the time of my life. And in the process, disruption, I think the biggest disruptor in our life is the internet. Again, all of us are people who are, sort of exist in this space. And we are doing a lot of smart things, and different people are doing different models. But I think the biggest disruption happening in the last 20 odd years is the growth of the internet and how it's changing consumer behavior. And now with this pandemic, it's only accelerated that. So now, like whatever we thought was going to happen, and we always said that in another 5 years, another 7 years, these things are going to happen. Now it's become a sort of a reality that it may happen in a year. It will be real in a year. So that's the sort of exciting part. And we are contributing. I'm doing a lot of exciting stuff at Applause. So we've built out a model which is sort of goes out there and invests money upfront in content creation and then looks to license it. So it is a bit sort of radical in that sense. But again, not when you compare it to how the movie business operates, we are really like a hybrid movie model studio, of raising finance, attracting capital to content creation, and then proceeding to license and monetize it.
Great. So let's go back. You said you've had a very well spread out journey. So your television, and you're also doing some films in between. After you left Star, you spent some time developing some films, I believe. How has that helped you in your journey, in your journey with the streamers now? Or have you had to learn everything? Have you had to relearn everything when you're making streaming shows?
No, not really. Actually, as a consumer, when you think about it, is that when you think about Indian television to start with, and the television we've all grown up on, way before the daily soap opera revolution happened, India used to produce weekly television. And India has produced some excellent weekly television. In the golden days of Doordarshan, and even in the 90s, I think there were some really excellent shows on all the channels. So to that extent, producing what is loosely defined as premium drama or premium television has been done, in the context of things. I have been a voracious consumer of all of that. So, I've grown up watching Hindi movies, I've grown up watching English movies, and I've spent a lot of time consuming American television as well, like all of the possible. So it's not so much of a relearning as much as it's a different format, it's a different type of storytelling. It's pretty common in the West. They have done this kind of premium drama series that we are talking about so much now. It's pretty common in the US. So it's a function of aligning the creative people we work with to sort of deliver on that. So it's not so much of a relearning as much as a redisciplining, I would say. As in, you get used to producing content in a particular way. You get used to being a broadcaster. So it's a different sort of position to be in. But being a producer, and that's what I am at heart, and and what I do, I am a creative producer. That's what I do. I make things happen. I put things together, and I try to bring them to fruition. So I think it's good. I mean, it's not so much new as much as, applying a lot of old. Finally, storytelling is going to be storytelling, right? Stories are going to have start, middle, and end. Stories are going to have multiple layers. Stories are going to, go on. A movie is a movie. What changes is people. What changes is stars. What changes is social context. What changes is modernity. So it's a variety of combinations. So I like that. I like, as they say that, history is, always goes in circles, right? As in, what history always repeats itself. So things go around and come around. What changes are people. What changes are, some social more, some social taste, but a lot of universal truths remain the same.
Well, that's pretty deep in terms of. So, but if you go back in time, storytelling was happening in America. Then came HBO, which changed the way storytelling was being done on television. Then came Netflix, which magnified what HBO was doing. So, aren't people having to retool and again and again in that sense? Though it's been almost 2 decades, I think that set them, or a decade and a half, it set them apart.
Well, the good thing for India, I guess, is that, like while America had their HBO moment and, HBO happened and then it sort of redefined, cinematic television, as it's called.
Yeah.
And it attracted a lot of, filmmakers to it as compared to just TV producers. I guess the advantage for India is that we are currently having our HBO moment. The whole rise of OTT and devices and all of that in the last 2-3 years is our HBO moment. And I guess the advantage for us is that we have the reference point of HBO, right? Because we've seen what they've done and we are able to learn best practices from them. Also, the world has become a much smaller place. So, the scope of, having global learning, global understanding, adapting shows, doing different things, working with international writers or directors, these are all things that are possible today. A global streamer, in a sense, is somebody like, while we refer to, a Netflix or an Amazon as an international streamer, but they have an office in BKC and we have access to a variety of things which they also bring to the table. So I think the world has become a smaller place and has become a much better place for creative people. So if you have an open mind, if you're curious, if you're willing to learn, and if you're willing to sort of, see things in new light, it's an amazing opportunity. And from a learning point of view, you're still telling a story. See, because at the end of the day, no matter what technology you put into it, and no matter all of that, finally, it's got to be a compelling enough story for somebody to give you their attention and time and then their money. So, and that's not going to change in a hurry.
Sure, I get that. Yeah. So, what inspires you in as far as films is it films? Is it life? Is it books? And which of the people who make these inspire you, or whose works have inspired you?
See, I'm in that sense, I'm not a big art house fan, so I never, never ever
You
give
did
right
NDTV
answer.
Lumiere in your time.
No, I never give the right answer to these questions. I never studied film formally, so I never, no, I never did go to film institute or to any of the big film schools. But I've always been a fan of what I call, popular culture. Right, I've been drawn to that when I was growing up. Me and my mom used to go and see Hindi movies every week for the whole decade of the 70s. Every possible movie that has been made, I've seen. I watched obviously large amounts of TV, watched a lot of Hollywood cinema, all the films. Spielberg is a great, I'm a big fan of Spielberg. I like that kind of thing. I love the Rocky series. So I'm a mixed bag that way. I don't have, I'm not like fixated with any type of, like I can, I enjoy watching documentaries as much as I enjoy watching comedies. I currently, my son and me watch one episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm every night through the pandemic. It's just one of those things, it's a goofy thing, just one episode, not going on to the next and not trying to miss the one that we are doing. So it's a mix. I mean, I read books. I am inspired by lives of people. One of my favorite pastimes is to read biographies, short biographies. I think it's good, and it's not necessarily about film people or entertainment or anything. Any biography, any great person doing great stuff is of inspiration to me. So yeah, I think it's all that. I think daily life, news, what's going on. I'm innately curious, so I'm like sort of always interested in all sorts of things. And I think all of that put together sort of drives drives what I do.
Great. So I'm going to just pause for a minute. Viewers, if you want to send your questions across to us, please post your question in the question and answer panel, or go onto our Facebook page and post your questions. We'll ask questions for Sameer too. Thank you for that. Now let's get on with Sameer. So what books have you read? Because you're a voracious reader in the lockdown, during the lockdown period. And what do you recommend to people who are watching us today?
Well, some of the books I read are quite boring. I mean, you wouldn't probably like it, but some interesting ones. So, like Sonali Bendre gave me a book to read called IBM and the Holocaust, which is a story about Nazi Germany and the Holocaust, and how IBM, the company, the famous IBM, was involved in helping the Nazis, sort of register and essentially data mine and supervise and, in a sense, um, control the entire concentration camps,
Wow.
and do the social profiling of the Jews at that time. So that was like quite a crazy book. I'm reading this book, 16 Stormy Days, which is about, the formation, the creation of our constitution and the early years of post-independent India and all the stuff that happened. So that was quite cool. There's all sorts. There's a book I've got called Cuisine and Empire, which is my always go-to book, whenever I'm a bit bored or whatever, I read it. It's essentially a history of food, and of how our as human beings, how we started eating food, and how various cuisines developed, and what is religious cuisine, and what is royal cuisine, and what is commoner cuisine. And when you read it, you suddenly realize that almost everything that we do, it goes back like 3, 4, 5, 10,000 years, and all has sort of different origins. It's just very interesting. So it's all, I mean, all sorts of crazy books. There's a book called Wayfinders. It's about, by Wade Davis, about, essentially a lot of ancient knowledge that has been lost. And Wade Davis is a person who really pushes for this, that we got to preserve ancient knowledge and ancient sort of customs and belief systems. Now we are doing this show with Gurinder and Sundar called Seeker, which is going to be built out in that manner. So I've started reading a book called A Case for God by Karen Armstrong, which is really nice. And she really sort of, studies as to why do we believe in God, and why does God exist? And is God a human creation, or is there for real? And there's another book called The Unknown Man by an author called Yatri, which is again, thoughts. So, I mean, it's just that. I mean, I can read anything. I mean, I don't mind.
So where do you go when you believe it's becoming too much? Everything's becoming too much. What do you do? Work, maybe leisure is becoming too much. Maybe work is becoming too much. What do you do, and where do you go?
I don't have a sense of anything becoming too much. I've always said this, that, I'm in a state of, like, I try to remain in a state of work and vacation at the same time. So, I try and live in that manner where I sort of switch on and switch off, so that, when I'm working, then I have an intense and focused burst of work. And then once that's done, then I can actually switch off and read a book, or, watch a movie or something in that short time span. So I try and stay in that sense. So like, I don't have like, like I would go off to my farm, but it's not really like a break or anything, because even when I'm there, I have Wi-Fi and I'm fully connected, and I'm happy to respond to all messages and mails instantly. So it's not a switch off in that sense. I mean, I don't necessarily need to get away from it all. I've never felt the need to do that. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I'm on one long vacation.
Okay, that's fantastic. So now, I started this by saying I read one of your pieces. I think you wrote it for Outlook Business. It was really well written. So have you been writing yourself in terms of penning a script, or do you have those ambitions to, apart from being a producer, of being a writer, director, or showrunner yourself?
But actually, as a showrunner, though, as a producer, we are a showrunner. So, I mean, showrunner is a very, sort of a funny term. It's been invented most recently. But otherwise, the most important thing is producer and executive producer, which I am. About writing myself, see, I've done it a couple of times. I've written a few pieces, once or a couple of times. But I think it requires a lot more effort. I really admire how you guys, are able to write and put out journalistic pieces so frequently, and with so much detail. I think it requires that attention and focus, which I'm not able to give it now. About being a director, I have directed in the past. So as when I first started out, that's what I used to do. As direct commercials, direct documentaries, all of that. Going forward now, let's see what happens. But currently, I'm really happy doing this producing business, and writing is a passion. I mean, it's something I want to do, but I haven't got around to doing it in any sort of meaningful way.
So why? I mean, because because your work's keeping you busy, but we all have we all have stories to tell apart from just producing. So I'm saying you may have stories which maybe a writer cannot narrate or have the narrative the way you want it. So why not get writing yourself?
No, but again, the way I see it is that even if I have a story to tell, I can work with other people to do it. I mean, most of the stories we are telling are selected by us, to decide which ones we want to do, which ones we don't want to do, and we get completely involved. So, I mean, in that sense, everything that we've produced so far and you've seen on screen has our fingerprints all over it. So good or bad, it has us all over it. We are totally injected into it. We've made it happen. It's not something that we, cut a check and said, okay, go make this and come back and thank you very much. So, I mean, our involvement is there. So that's really exciting to be involved. And, and we're working, like we've done whatever, 15, 20 odd shows, working with different people. So, talking about different directors, different writers, different creative processes. It's really exciting, and I really enjoy myself doing all of that. So I guess sometime we'll write something on our own, but we'll see. It's not the most important thing now.
Okay, great. So now, you seem to have had a busy 2 months during the pandemic. You had your Honor Undekhi releasing on Sony Live. Now you have Avrodh coming on, I think again on Sony Live on 31st July. Hostages season 2 in August and Scam in August.
Right.
And they said the pandemic stopped life in its tracks. I'm just kidding about that. I know you've been producing these long before that. But is this what you would like Life at Applause to look like, with several releases coming out almost every month? Several, what do we see Applause becoming? Is it going to be like an American studio churning out product regularly?
That's what we've done actually from the time we set up. If you think about it, we set up coming up in August. It will be 3 years at Applause, and in the 3 years, all of last year, we released virtually a show a month. So we did 12 releases before the pandemic happened, and then proceeded to do these last 4, 5 now in these 3, 4 months. So that's been our plan in any case, that we want to produce a larger number of high quality shows, and we are learning along the way. So I mean, it's not that everything goes as per plan, but there are some things that work out really well, some things that don't work out so well. But it's been a good journey so far, and that's what we want to do. I want to continue to build Applause into producing bigger and better content, diversifying into content types. So like now we've so far done a lot of premium drama series. We're going to add movies into our mix. We're going to add some form of short form content. We are pursuing a couple of documentaries. I'm trying to do one animation show per se, not short, but sort of a long form animation show. So there are different things, and we are collaborating with international partners. We are happy to co-produce and co-fund. So it's a thing, because I think our model, the way we've created Applause, is really like a hub and spoke. So what we are, me, Deepak, my creative team, Prasoon, Yogesh, Ashok was there before, now Yogesh. So this is a really core team. We are the hub. And then working off this hub, we work with spokes with a variety of content partners, marketing partners, and distribution partners, platforms. So it works out quite well, and we are getting better at what we do. We are learning from our mistakes. So because, if you've made 16 shows, you have activities of 16 shows to compare with each other, right? So, what are the pitfalls? What happens? What do things cost? How does it work? A variety of those things. So all of that, I mean, for us, it's a continuous learning process. And we'll just keep growing and building it from here.
Great. So now, how's it currently? Are you still developing your own slate, or are you being approached by specific streamers and specific, buyers and asking you to develop something for them? Or are you developing whatever you believe in and then looking for a buyer?
Again, it's very early years. As I say, if you're going to be 3 years old, and if you count the first year as essentially pre-operative, then we've had 1 full year of production, 2 full years of production, and 1 full year of revenue. So, I mean, in that sense, it's a very young company, and we are still, like 5 years later, we'll talk about year-on-year growth and cycles and stuff like that. That being said, a lot of good things are happening. So one is that all the stuff that we've done so far has obviously earned us some reputation. A lot of the stuff that we've already created, we are doing subsequent seasons for. So, the subsequent seasons becomes a sort of a more deeper interaction and, working with our platform streamer partners. We are looking at, continuing to develop the stuff that we do. We are looking to engage with streamers at an earlier stage with some very specific things that we think, do. So we are doing that. Actually, we are working with a streamer in what can be defined as an early stage participation. So yeah, I mean, honestly, at this point in time, again, the business itself is some 4 or 5 years old. We are 3 years old in that, and for India, this is still trying to discover what the right way is. So I think we are trying to be generally right and focus on sort of 3 or 4 key things. First thing being quality is the best business plan, and a delighted customer makes all business possible. So keeping those 2 things in mind, I think we stay focused on what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So now, how is Applause working post the pandemic in terms of you're all working from home, development is taking place, there's Zoom calls, Google Meets, Microsoft Teams, or which was software you're using with other communication software. So, how's it going? Like the development process, has it been more effective, or has it been less effective? And face to face is better.
One is that we've sort of managed quite well during this pandemic. We are a smaller team, so we are like about 40 of us. It's not too many people. A lot of the younger people who were from out of town, they've gone back home. Some are continuing, some still live here. A lot of us are from Bombay. So I think we've managed this work from home well enough. It's not something that I truly recommend or think. I can't speak. I can't wax eloquent about that because I realize that it's different for different people. As in, this working from home is easy for some and really difficult for others. But that being said, I think we've managed quite well. What we've also discovered is that a lot of our work, since production has stopped for everyone, it's really about everything else but the production, which is pretty much a lot of what we do. So a lot of what we do is connected to writing, development, striking new deals, putting things together, completing contracting, all of that. All of this can work from home. So that's worked really well. I mean, all of these, we have Microsoft Teams, Zoom, all the usual apps. So I think that's going really well. I think what we are doing, in a sense, is probably working more because there's no travel time now. So no travel time. And in a sense, I think even boundaries are blurring a bit. So, I heard this on another call where somebody says that it's less working from home and more feeling like living at work. So, so, it is that, but it's good. It's good. And see, we've been sort of fortunate in the sense that arriving into the pandemic, we had 2 shows that were shooting halfway through, which was stopped. Most of everything else was complete for us, and nothing new had started. So that was a stroke of good fortune. And we were able to do a lot of post-production work in this period, which is why you're seeing so many releases. So that's been good luck.
But is that something you'd like to continue going ahead, or is that something you'd like to, change when things become a little more? We don't know when. 6 months, 3 months, 50,000 cases as of yesterday, 49,000 in India. America is going berserk. Brazil's going berserk. Hotspots are popping up in different countries. Though corridors have opened between different nations. India, France has opened up. India, US has opened up. Flights have commenced. But still, despite that, I mean, so what's your perspective on that?
Honestly, I think, we are one part of a much larger thing now in this, and there are so many unanswered questions. And so it's very hard to sort of predict. What I am trying to do is, and this is what we do as a team, is that, it's been famously said that charity begins at home. So what I am trying to do is to try and look after me and my immediate ecosystem. The people whom we work with, what we do, what we are trying to do. And I think if everyone does that in a radiating manner, at least that will be some good to come out of this. I don't know when filming resumes and when filming resumes in earnest. It's really important because it's going to have huge knock-on implications to the industry next year. Because this year we are still getting away with what's ready and what can be done and all of that. But if you have a long spell of no productions, you're talking about an even bigger dry spell of no new content going out. This, of course, then has different implications on different people because maybe the international streamers, because they've got such big giant libraries of international content, they can still ride out a couple of years. It might be different from other people. It will be totally different for theaters. What happens to a theater when theaters reopen, but there's no new product in the theater? Why would anyone go? So, I mean, there are, if the whole economy doesn't pick up, then what happens to advertising revenue? So I think there are a whole bunch of moving parts in this, and and it obviously creates stress and strain on people. So what we are trying to do in our small way is to try and keep the team sort of focused and motivated, try and keep everyone sort of aligned, try and create a sense of purpose in life. That sure, we are in the middle of a pandemic and it is a once in a lifetime, once in a century kind of event. But that being said, we have to sort of hold hands, socially distanced, but hold hands and get through this.
Yeah.
And find a way around it, tell new stories. I mean, we are in that business, so we should be grateful for the business we're in. We could be, it could be harder, but it's not. So that's what we're trying to do. And yeah, I agree with you. It's very difficult to predict as to how this plays out. This could be 3 months, it could be a year more, with all the like in production, we have such very real problems. You start a production. A lot of my TV colleagues are doing that. They start a production, they have a problem, they got to stop it. There are economic implications to these things. So at a time when the market is tight, when advertising is down, when revenues are hard to come by, cash flow is difficult, and then if you have these kind of problems, it only sort of compounds the difficulty. So yeah, I mean, I think it's important to approach all of this with a lot more creativity, a lot more calmness. We've got to sort of anticipate a lot more uh, of what's going to happen, and then and sort of figure it out.
So I'll come to that later. But you did a office episode, work from home,
Yep.
which you put on YouTube. So
Yeah.
Was that a promotional tool, or was it just to
Well,
get your?
Actually, the talent, I must thank the talent for that, because they were really sort of, they were all locked up. It was the early days of the lockdown and everyone was a bit stuck and going a bit stir crazy. I think now after about 4 months, people have also got acclimatized to it, in the sense that, okay, we are locked down. But in the beginning, there was that little bit of, one was the anticipation that we're going to get back to work in a month or maybe a month and a half maximum. And the second thing was we're still getting used to that. So the team got together and then they said that, what we should do is that anyway, we made a show called The Office, and if offices are shut and everyone's working from home, then it's only right that we do a office work from home episode, which I immediately sort of said, go for it. I mean, we greenlit that immediately, got it written. They all filmed it in their house. We edited it, put it out. It was great fun doing that. I mean, it was neither a promotional tool nor any. There was no greater plan. Everyone wanted to do it, and I said, sure, let's do it. So we did it.
And it got the views that you expected, or?
Actually, again, I don't think we had any expectation of it. It was something we wanted to do, so we did it. It was not designed to be it was not designed to get any. There's no success parameter to this. It's just a thing we wanted to do. We thought it'd be funny, and we can do a lot more of these kind of things. So we thought we should try it out.
Yeah. So there are many questions, but I'll come to them later. The viewers are writing to us, and I'll ask them later. In terms of, do you consider applause a success so far, and what are the parameters and criteria you're laying down to define its success? Is it bottom line? Is it top line? Is it the output? Like in the case of the streamers, they look at subscriber acquisition as a success, and finally they're looking at the bottom line, and they're looking at reducing the cost per acquisition. They're looking at upping the revenue per subscriber per acquisition and stuff like that. So what's your parameters?
So for us, I mean, see, we are a studio. We are part of Showbiz. Showbiz is show and biz.
Sure.
So bottom line, in any case, is a given. If you're in a business, then bottom line is very basic.
But you might have a runway to make your profits. You might have a runway. Yeah.
Obviously, we do that. I mean, we have a business plan. We have a runway. So the two big things that must come out of this is that we must become a studio that is known for its creative output and for the quality of its product. And then we must make money while doing so and have fun while doing so. So, I mean, those are our three sort of, broad things to approach it. We are obviously not in the subscriber business because we are not a platform. So we are not a B2C.
Sure, I get that. Yeah.
So in what we do, we are looking to work with, I guess, a wider variety of creative people. So that we get, we can, and the quality of our product improves and we improve as people. And to have obviously more success to that product, because if I make a show and I give it to a streamer, and if it does well for the streamer, then I'm a happy person, right? Because the streamer is happy, I'm happy, audience is happy, everyone is happy, we can do more seasons, all of that is possible. So obviously for us, the end game is the same. While the exact end game may not impact us directly, but it's still the same outcome. That, if a streamer gets more subscribers, it's better for me. So I think we've done well so far. I mean, we've had a good start. Success is, I think it's a couple of years out to not truly define success in that sense. But
And I'm not
we've had
just
a
talking
good.
about bottom line because certain streamers, it's customer acquisition. Right now, I'm just saying their parameter of success is I've managed to subscribe, get about, let's say 100 million subscribers. They don't care about the bottom line because they have that entire plan in place. So that,
Yeah, so I think in our sense, I mean, obviously bottom line is important. We have a business plan in place that sees us, achieving certain deliverables in certain milestones, which we are doing. So we've had a very good first year. We had a very good second year. We are into our third year. It's all on track and life is good. So, I mean, to that extent, it's okay. But I think we are looking at a much longer horizon of a 5, 7, 10-year horizon, because, I'd like Applause to be one of those big studio brands. And so that's the goal. That's the ambition. And so let's see how that goes. We've had a good start.
yeah. Is it domestic or are you looking at a global play going forward? Because so far, everyone is saying India. Recently, Uday said that the problem with us is our content hasn't traveled. One, the entire broadcast industry is heavily dependent on advertising, and subscription is not really coming up to the numbers that they want because the regulator is kind of stifling them in a way. That's what they keep saying. And so the advertising, your pie has that the problem has been that the industry has been so much dependent on advertising.
Right. But I think from our scheme of things, we are obviously looking at, it's really the world is our oyster because it's an open playground. For now, we've started in India. We're an Indian studio. We are developing content. But thankfully, because of the streamers, the global streamers, a lot of these things, that you operate in a particular geography, and therefore you tell stories for a particular geography, will gradually, it's already happening with them. I mean, the US soft power exists all over the world. Whether in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, Indian soft power can exert the same influence is something that, is dependent on people like us to get out there and do. In many ways, the Chinese have done a lot of, external push with their soft power. The Koreans have done that. So because India tends to be a large market, it is often, you can be happy in India because it's such a large market. But now what global streamers have automatically created is that even if I make a show and put it on a streamer, it can be viewed in Mexico. It can be viewed. Whether they're viewing it or not is a separate matter, but it can be, which is what actually makes us.
Like budgets are different. And if you have an Indian show being made in India, and if you have the same show made in America with a similar ranking cast, the cost would be very, very different.
No, of course. So what I'm saying is that, like, I was asked this question by someone that, are you making, like, what's your focus? So I said, our focus is local for global, right? So if you ask me, I am focused for local for global. I'm not setting out to say that let us make a global show and therefore this show is the one that I'm going to make that the Americans are going to love. That is something that will maybe happen as a co-production and will happen definitely much later in life. Currently, our focus is very local for global. The opportunity that the technology has created is that, like how foreign language shows have broken out across the world, including India, right? Like something like a Narcos got viewed in India, and it's not essentially neither an American show. It's a Mexican. It comes out of Colombia and Mexico, but it did really well, right, all over the world.
Sure,
so
sir.
Those kinds of things happen. I think Netflix has said that Sacred Games for them, the first season really broke out and got a lot of viewership globally. So I think a lot more of that will happen because it's driven by technology. See, so far what's happened in the last 20 years of television looks inwards, right? So if you look inward and you're monetizing inwards and you're working inwards, then it's a good thing to do. I mean, there's no shame in doing that. Now there's an opportunity, so I guess more of that can happen.
By that, I mean, like, I know certain animation studios have set up outposts in Hollywood, and they're starting to make co-productions and they're hiring local people out there. So what I'm looking at is penetrating the American market with American style shows rather than Indian shows alone, is what I'm talking about.
It's definitely a possibility. And in fact, different people in different ways have done that. So like, I mean, the story of Hollywood is that every time Hollywood runs out of money, they find a new investor, right? So, there were originally it was run by the Jews and all of them. Then the Germans came, then the Russians came, then the Indians went for a bit. The Arabs were there. So, I mean, that is money. That's a different matter, that will you fund and invest in those kind of things. If you're talking about actually producing, high quality stuff in America for the Americans, I would argue that the Americans are already super qualified and doing that in any case, right?
Okay.
So it's about growing together. I think it's about partnerships. It's about collaborations. It's about sort of, joining hands with people who are doing great stuff and maybe contributing, and maybe we can all grow together. That's the way I'd see it. It's not so much of a kick of, like, let's do something somewhere and, be international.
Great.
I've
I mean,
never been really
yeah.
drawn to that.
Yeah. So yeah, I've got a question from Kajal Chaudhary based on what I was talking about. She's based in Paris. She's asking, is there a possibility to make a co-production between India, France, and the UK?
Yeah, most definitely. In fact, we got approached by a documentary company to, sort of figure out if we could co-produce some documentaries, which would be partly financed by the French and partly financed by us. And then we'd both look to sort of monetize it in a particular way, where they take care of, France and Europe, and we take care of rest of the world and India, and work with international streamers. So actually what we are trying to do is that, see, before this, in fact, what the streamers have done now is by arriving, they are actually sort of shaking up the global market. Otherwise, originally what used to happen in the West is that anyone in the US or Europe is completely aware of how this whole syndication licensing model works, how the multiple financing model works, create for one market, sell it to different territories, all of that. Streamers now sort of, put a spanner in the works with that. But that being said, there are a lot of people who do this very, very effectively. And we are looking to partner with these people as to how to create, multinational content, which is co-funded, co-financed. Finally, what has to work is the economic. The business of this has to work, as to who pays for it, where do you recover money, and how does it all sort of, pan out.
So how does Kajal get in touch with your team? What does she do?
You can write me an email. Your team can share my email with her, and I'll connect with her.
Great. So now I'm going to go on to audience questions. This Clyde D'Souza, who's saying, you said, paraphrasing you, finally storytelling gets its due, a start, middle, end. What's your opinion on the short form, 15-second, 30-second, 90-second story platforms? With exceptions, are they lending to good storytelling or a devolving of collective society with fails, yoga pants, slapstick passing off its stories?
Well, see, I think the whole TikTok revolution and what got created with TikTok, what before that, what YouTube did, a lot of the short form storytelling is also, it's democratized storytelling.
Sure.
Before this whole internet and social media came along, storytelling was a preserve of the people, the few people who were allowed to do it, right? So you had to be either a filmmaker or you had to be a TV producer, and that was it. Then YouTube came out, it said broadcast yourself. Now TikTok has come and has gone even further with that, with the short form 30, 90 seconds. It's a form of creative expression, right? I don't think, it would be right for us to be critical or to judge any of that. There's lots of people like it, it's good fun. And even that, when you see finally, like for all the billions and trillions of pieces of content on YouTube, some things rise up, some things shine, some things are successful. That's what creates a YouTube star, much like in every other traditional form, right? Where you have a star. You have TikTok stars. So I think quality of content, quality of storytelling, that remains fundamental. So even when you look at, to take some TikTok star and you say that, this guy is really popular. He's got some, 100 million followers and is really killing it. And if you watch his or her work, you will find storytelling in it. You will find technique, you will find craft, you will find, and it doesn't necessarily need to be art house. It doesn't need to be some Satyajit Ray kind of thing. It is just good storytelling. It is very creative. A thought is being communicated in 60 or 90 seconds very, very effectively. That is making people enjoy it. So, I mean, I think it's all there. We are living in highly connected times with people, with devices, with access. And people are going to tell, people are going to express themselves. And we should allow that. I mean, that's important. And they'll get better at it. We're all getting better at it.
So what's your view on after TikTok bans, there's so many indigenous platforms which have come up. Do you think they're going to, I've read some posts on LinkedIn where, aping TikTok is going to be disaster for Indian short form content platforms. What's your view on that? Or do you think Indians are ingenious enough and they're pretty clever enough to do better than the Chinese? Because a lot of the software that has been written internationally has been done by the Indians.
Honestly, I think TikTok is more than just a ban and a replacement. Sure. It's an ecosystem that's built up over the last so many years, 4-5 years, and it's built on some very clever insight, consumer insight. It's built on some really good understanding of how markets and audiences work. It's not something that is just replaceable. You say, this is gone, this is the new one, and everyone do that. There are many other sort of wheels that sort of run that. It will also then become an economic model. It will need financial backing. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of the big social platforms have huge financial resources to keep going, to keep doing customer acquisition, and to be building all of that up. And besides, personally, I don't think the TikTok ban will. I mean, I think it'll all get revoked and get sorted out, and it'll all get sort of straightened out in the next couple of months. So let's see.
Great. So Clyde's asking another question. Is there a standard that studios pay for stories and screenplays? For example, like in the US, WGA slabs, or is there a different standard in India, Bollywood? So I think Clyde's based in Dubai. Could you shed some light on this aspect?
But I don't think we have a standardized rate in that sense. I mean, there's no sort of standardized rate. I think it's a bit of a demand and supply between what you want and versus what you're getting. It's a little bit connected to past record, past reputation, those kind of things. So obviously, successful people get paid more, and newer people get paid less. But I think that's true for most industries and for most things. The standardization and the rates and the sort of thing, I think the music industry has made significant progress in this with the whole royalties and all of that business. I think that is still to spread out to the other crafts. I guess that will happen. It's a process. So yeah, I mean, I think again we are on that track, but not there yet.
So we're looking at a range of anywhere between even 1.5 lakh going up to maybe 1 crore, depending on the writer.
For a story, or for because there are different parts, right? A movie
per episode. If you're looking at, let's say an episode is, I know it used to be anywhere between 15 and 30,000. Then it went up to 50,000 per episode on television.
You're talking TV. I think on
the OTT side, is it 10 lakhs, 15 lakhs an episode, or is it? What is the broad range that people can work with?
The cost that it works out to is say from 3 to 5 lakhs. Going up to 15 to 20 lakhs. And also, this is not just one person. This is a sort of a writer's room that gets created. So there are different people doing different things. It could be more. You could spend more money buying a book. You could then spend more money in developing that into series. So, I mean, when we look at a final cost of writing, it has those different elements in it. So it's a range. I mean, again, it is many times we work with directors who also supervise the writer's room. So while you have a director's fee, you also know you're paying for a big degree of supervision on the writer's room, which is not counted in that manner, but it is there. We all are involved in it. So if you take if you allocate everyone's cost to it, I think the cost of writing is much higher. But it sort of works in that manner.
Yeah, now this is a cheeky question from an anonymous attendee. Any issue with art house? You you don't like Satyajit Ray?
Who I don't like? No, I like him a lot.
This is somebody being cheeky.
No, that's okay.
And having a smiley at the end of it.
I don't have. You cannot not like Satyajit Ray. I mean, he's obviously India's greatest filmmaker. What I'm saying is that I have not been to film school, and I have seen so much form of cinema, so much content, and I view so much of it that I'm influenced. My influences are very varied. So I like Manmohan Desai as much as I like Satyajit Ray. Let me put it that way.
Great. So there's Mukesh Krishnan who's asking, any plans to produce short movie with independent filmmakers?
Well, I think some people are doing very good work. There is this, I've been seeing these movies, the Royal Stag large short films, which they've been doing for a few years now. And I think some of them are pretty good. And they've really shown a model of how this can be done. So I was quite sort of interested in that and wanting to do some of those. We ourselves have not yet figured out exactly how to do the short film, how to do it, because your classic streamer platforms are not looking for that kind of thing. YouTube is a very different model, so it needs some sort of advertising support. I think this large short films is a great example of how to sort of try and do this in a sensible manner. So we've not given it much thought, but that is something we're interested in doing. Yes.
Great. So there's another question from Vikas Agarwal. I have a question for Sameer. How does one go about walking that thin line of choosing scripts, showcasing what is happening in society versus telling stories that might shape society?
That's that's like looking for the holy grail. Honestly, of trying to find that. I think what sort of guides us and sort of puts us in that, there are always two things that as an audience, there are sort of two things that you're looking for in life. Is that when you're looking at on the screen, You either want to see people like yourself, or you want to be like the people you see on screen, right? So those are sort of two things that sort of play out. And when you look at if you look at the history of the audiovisual medium, if you look at cinema, look at television, all of that, usually that's what ends up happening. That either you're seeing people that are like you, that are reflective of your life, your society, all of that, or then it's a function of I want to be like that. The other thing what happens is that what they call about that it's a familiar situation in which unfamiliar things happen, or it's an unfamiliar situation in which familiar things happen. So I mean, these are sort of more universal sort of truths. Within that context, now what we are trying to do is obviously we do a lot of consumer research ourselves. We are sort of reading the same sort of information that is available for everyone. We are going after a lot of the same consumer signals. Platforms obviously have a much deeper understanding of their own consumers, but to get that understanding, you've got to reach that level of consumers, to get any kind of valid database. But as a colleague of mine, Anuj Gandhi. So Anuj Gandhi at one point had told me, so that everyone talks about data, but what is gut and experience if not data? Which in a way is true. That a lot of us, when we talk about 30 years of being in the business, we are actually operating on data. We call it gut and we call it instinct, but it's still data. It is, I've done this many times and trust me, I know this works, kind of thing. So I think what we do is that we are obviously looking to do, tell stories that have, in the old days in Hindi cinema, there used to be this, that the producer or the director would always, the big question used to be, ki, is kahani mein seek kya hai? What is the moral of the story? It used to be just a thing, and we often, sort of diss, our past because, they weren't, cool enough or didn't say it right enough. But it's really true that what is the moral of this story? Is there a moral of this story? At the end of when I have told you something, have you learned something from it? And if there is something to take away, we call it in advertising jargon, you say, what are the key takeaways? Have my brand attributes got, sort of communicated effectively? I mean, all of this comes down to the same thing, that what does the audience get to take away after this experience? So was it and it doesn't need to always be intellectual. You can just have, an amazing, thrilling ride and then walk away from that. Or this could leave you with a lot of afterthought, or it could be something that disturbs you and you want to go out there and change the world. Like how in a very sort of frivolous manner, how all of us guys watch Rocky movies and then proceed to go and sign up in gyms, which then lasts for about a week, after which it all sort of collapses. So,
no, I
but
think like what he was coming down to is like, if you look at what Hum Log uses Sabido technique. Miguel Sabido was a Televisa producer who, he has a certain process to produce content, which has an impact on society, because oftentimes, the suspension of disbelief comes in, but in Sabido, you don't have a suspension of disbelief. There's a technique which has had an impact in Mexico. For instance, a population control took place in Mexico because the stations over there follow the Sabido technique of telling stories. So I think he's meaning in that context where you entertain as well as you impact society in the right way. Like the pandemic is there. People are saying that your own column said that, which you wrote in Outlook, said that we as a race have destroyed the planet in a way, and unless we start doing things right, there may not be a next time if the next virus or the next biological attack hits us. So I think he's coming from that context.
I get that, and my sense is that I think in a way this is what we are doing in any case. Like where we are today is an outcome of the influences that we have created ourselves, right? Okay. I think different filmmakers and different creators in different ways are trying to influence society. You can influence society in a good way, you can influence it in a bad way, but I think people are already doing that. So like when you look at all the movies that get made in India, right, or in the world for that matter, there are many movies that are, make you sit up and think, and you really get startled by it. And there are many which are just silly, crazy dumb comedies, or one madcap movie, or an action adventure or something. So it takes all kinds. I don't think there's a one size fits all. I don't think there's the right way, because then that gets into a dictatorial regime, and that dictatorial regime is against a very grain of what creativity is. So creativity is that I want to laugh about something. So if I want to laugh about something, I should be allowed to laugh about something, and I should be allowed to make you laugh about it. Sure. I don't have to be meaningful at that moment and say that, yeah, but no, what is the point of it all? So it's just that. So I think it takes, like, if you when you talk about the series that you're talking about, I mean, a lot in the last 20 years, you would have to, and I'm sure somebody will do a sociological study on it. I'm sure the daily soap operas that started in the year 2000 and have gone on now for 20 years must have had some sort of social impact on India. You're talking about an entire generation that has grown up watching these shows. There must be something to this, right?
Yeah.
Because you're talking about 20 years now. A lot of people, when we young people come to join us and we are interviewing them, they're 25 years old, which means they were born like 5 years before KBC and Kyunki happened, and they've grown up, and if they've come from small towns, this has been the mainstay for entertainment and information. Television, right? Television has been the biggest influencer in India. So how has all this influenced them? We don't know. How has all the reality shows they've seen on TV influenced them? All the big bosses and the jhalaks and the idols. Like, how has this generation grown up? We are the older people, right? We are the ones in part who created it, and we are not necessarily influenced by it. But we got to meet other people. I think history will tell.
Okay, get that. So now there are 3 questions from 3 different people on what is the best way to pitch your story if you're confident about it, but haven't done anything in writing before and don't have a direct access to potential production houses and just have a common email address. That's one. And that's from Darshan Chothani. Then we've got Riyaz Sangvi, and we have Prashant Setha. How can a fresh writer pitch a story to applause? Is there scope for a new writer with applause, or does it work only with its own team of writers? Riyaz also asking about new writers. Or, her question is, or is applause only working on the content that has already been pitched pre-pandemic?
So the answer to all of that is that no, it's the easiest way to pitch to us is to write to us. Most people tend to write to me directly, and then I sort of connect them with our commissioning team. There's a colleague of mine, Rajiv, who works very closely with me. And then if the two of us sort of like any ideas, then we sort of radiate it out to the larger creative team, which is Deepak and Siddharth, Rohit, Priya, Rahul. So this is the gang. This is some 5-6 of us. We have a way of doing this. So the first port of call is usually me or Ranji, and then it goes from there. We are not fixated about any, like you got to be a proven writer or not, because, there's finally the story is the story. And I know enough number of proven, sort of famed writers who are still, presenting not such a good story, and something really smart and nice comes out from somebody new. About the thing about producing it, I have just one sort of thing. I've always maintained that ideas can come from anywhere. Anybody, a kid can have an idea. Somebody, an older man, who's spent his entire life working in insurance at the age of 60 can have an idea. And we are very open and welcoming to that. I think the execution of that idea then should allow expertise, right? Because then what happens is then you can make a great product. So just because somebody has a great idea doesn't mean they can necessarily take it through execution. Which is where then we work in a collaborative manner. We can attach directors, we can attach producing houses, we can put a thing together. So I mean, it's all. I mean, I think in any case, see, a lot of ideas, a lot of stuff is going to come from all sorts of different sources, right? Then also, people who are doing a lot of this often suffer from writer's block. They get jaded. You can't think anymore. They get used to their own stuff. Trust me, I know this works, so let's do more of this stuff. All of that happens. So there are, producing is not an easy job because there are so many sort of different things to manage. There are creative egos, there are reputations, there are novices and there are experts, all sorts of things. So yeah, but we try our best.
Yeah, great. So how do you choose a story or a subject or a story? And the process of greenlighting a project, post that, I know you have to find a producer, your creative team runs through it. And then as far as you're concerned, who's your sounding board and which are the genres you're looking at developing further? You handle thriller, you handle the thriller noir, you handle some chick series, you handle some drama, some family, you're planning historical with Taj. So, so any further thoughts on this?
So see, for us, I mean, and I can only speak for myself, as in for our company, is that obviously one filter for our selection process is to get to do stuff which we are not already doing or have just done. So like in the event that suppose I've got 3 or 4 thrillers in development, then maybe I wouldn't want to do the 5th one right now. So that becomes a sort of a filter. The other thing is that there are some, 5 or 7 broad genres that you want to sort of focus on. So we want to do thriller, we want to do crime, we want to do homeland security, military, we want to do biopic, we want to do stories of inspiration and, feeling good. We want to do romance. We want to try, still looking for our one great family drama. We haven't got it yet. We want to do historical. So, I mean, these are like pretty, these are things to be done. For us, the process is quite simple. An idea or a story or a book or something comes our way, and then basis who's bringing it. So sometimes the producer brings it to us, sometimes the writer brings it to us, and then we get into development, and we are very involved in this. So I mean, in that sense, we are. You can almost call us painful partners, but we are really good with that. I mean, we work cohesively, but we are totally involved in it. So to that extent, any product that you've seen coming out of Applause is something that we are totally on top of, and we take full responsibility for it. Um, and that's how it works. Then, I mean, we'll put things together because there are so many different things. Sometimes the great idea comes, we get a producer attached and then decide that, okay, now we need a very good director who then comes with his own inputs, because the director's vision on written material will always, be the value add. So then that happens and that's got to change. Actors come on board and the whole thing sort of comes together. So I think that's our process. But it starts with the writing. It starts with that idea and the writing, and if we greenlight is really that we've got material that we want to now spend more money on and take it to screen. That's that moment. So up until then, it's all development.
Okay, let me just check any other questions which have come up. Then I'll go on to my questions. There are questions that are just keeping on coming. So this one is from Gopal Agrawal. Before reaching out to OTT, does he have any rating in mind for OTT players? First, I should speak to this OTT, then the other one. So is there a ranking of reaching out to OTTs, or you're engaging with the commissioning editors anyway at the OTT platforms, and hence you know what they expect, what they're looking for at that moment, and therefore you approach, or is there a ranking in your head?
No, there's no ranking in our head because I think there are I think about 6 or 8 key players in the market today, and I think all of them are doing really well in their own sort of space and this thing. They're also because it's such early days. They operate in sort of different and distinctive universes, and some come with a broadcast legacy. Some are pure OTT players. Some are free view. Some are subscriber driven. So I mean that's different combinations. So we don't really have any kind of sense in that. I think they're all doing well, and the next 3-4 years will be, like let's see, how they all succeed and how much we can help them in succeeding. That being said, when we create shows, we know that some shows, like each of the OTTs themselves are gradually, and it happened with TV as well. If you remember in the old days,
Yeah.
Z used to be the big sort of Desi channel, and Sony was there very always regarded as a sort of an urban channel, and then Star was that foreigner who became, the sort of the cool Desi or whatever, that Indian version of it. So I think platforms also have their own theory. They also have their own sort of their own learnings. So we spend a lot of time we have a lot of conversations with streamers to understand what they're thinking. We read, we watch what they're doing, what shows they release, in which direction they go, to get a better sense of what that thinking is. But see, the advantage with the business is that you're talking about a mass of niches, which means that you're talking to an audience which is say 100 or 200 million strong, but which consumes content in 20 million like that, 30 million like this, 50 million like this, and maybe all 200 million like one thing. So in that context, there is scope for so many different content types to be created. And I guess the key focus is to make the best possible content and find the right home for it. So that's what we try and do. So there's no preconceived notion or ranking in that sense.
Yeah, so going back again to writers pitching to you, Nalin Pastricha is asking for a web series to pitch to you. Oh, sorry, for a web series pitch to you from a writer. What level of detail would you like in the pitch Bible? Example, would you like one or more episodes already written?
Honestly, as far as writing goes, the more detailed the writing, the more clear the thought, the more effort that's gone into it, the better it is. I mean, that's a given. So, I mean, when people come to us with a sliver of an idea and say that, hey, this is an idea I have, and what do you think? Even if we are to say that, hey, great idea, let's do more with it, we are going to anyway tell you to go back and flesh it out more. So, I mean, a good way to start is to have a good 20, 30 page story, which, sort of really, even if it's not gone into episodic beats. And see that, I mean, see, finally, at the end of the day, Anil, this, that, like every other business, right? The creative business is also involves a degree of salesmanship. It involves a degree of pitching. That's why the word is there, right? I'm going to pitch an idea. So when you pitch an idea, you got to, one, it's got to be a good idea, and then two, you got to pitch it well, right? And you got to be confident about it. You got to be sure about it, and you got to help the person across the table see that vision, right? And get excited with that vision and say, man, let's totally make this, right? I'm going to bet my my fortune, and I'm going to bet my reputation. I'm going to make this. I'm going to take that risk. That's got to be done, which is why, when you say that people come for a narration, people describe an idea to you, the more enthusiastic, the more effervescent, the more exciting, the more, the more crazy it is, the better. The more detail is there, the better. It's just, it helps the pitch. And that goes in stages, like you arrive, you do a first meeting, you give a little bit of a teaser, what we call the elevator pitch. And somebody says, totally, I love this stuff. Do you have more about this? Sure, I got a lot more about it. Finally, it gets to, I have a total business plan. I got everything, man. I've got to invest in me. It's the same thing. There's no difference from a startup to a new idea. It's the same thing. It's got to have that passion, that energy, and that willingness to do a lot more hard work to get it to that point. So I think that's what it is.
Yeah, Clyde is being very prolific in his questions. How about sci-fi, not mythology? In your opinion, is it India-based studios or the gatekeepers of the major platforms averse or wary of this genre? Are they averse and wary of the genre of sci-fi? We've had some attempts, right, in the past with.
We have had some attempts, and honestly, it's a nice genre. I love sci-fi. I mean, I'm so excited that Apple is now going to be making Asimov's Foundation. Like a big deal. It's been my favorite, sci-fi series my entire life, and I've often dreamt of myself of making it. Then, when Lucas made Star Wars, it was a variation of a lot of science fiction is inspired by that. I don't know, India. I mean, I personally love sci-fi, but we haven't got around to doing it. Maybe because we are still sort of attempting, in a sense, to catch up as a third world country. Science fiction is going past first world, right? In a sense. So when you are third world, then you are looking to first become first world and then go sky. That's one. Second thing is that we have a very strong mythological sort of surrounding in our life. So every time we think of superheroes, we think of our deities as superheroes. So it's a fine line there. But that being said, I think there have been some good attempts. Some people have done interesting things. I think Shah Rukh did Ravan. That was a variation. Hrithik did his Krish and the whole series. So those were those. I mean, more recent ones. There are different times we've done that. I think more of that will happen. What I think will happen first, and we should, and that's what we are trying to do, is do what is called near future, right? So sci-fi is sort of takes you out. If you do near future, then it's like a few years out, 5 years, 3 years, that kind, and then it sort of builds from there, and then you sort of create those sort of situations there. So I think it'll happen. I don't know. I mean, now we are also again, the advantage with the big streamers is that we're going to be exposed to so much more content that who knows, maybe we grow a better taste for it.
Thanks for that. And so there's again more there's praise actually coming your way. Clyde has written one of the more intelligent webinars I've attended. Good insight shared here. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Anil and Sameer. Actually, it should just be thank you, Sameer.
Thank you, Clyde.
Mukesh Krishnan writes, motivated and inspirational. I've learned a lot. Regards. And Clyde again is active. He's saying, that's what I wanted to hear. Near future, hard science. Thanks. So I guess there aren't any more questions coming in now. So I'll move on to my questions that I had for you. You've done this thing with Gurinder Chadha for The Seeker. So
yes.
Did that come about with Sundar approaching you, or was it that
yes.
Sundar stitched Gurinder with him, and then he came with Gurinder to you?
No. So Sundar actually had been talking to Gurinder, and they had done work on this, and they had developed an idea which he approached us with. And and thought was that because I had met Sundar, I think a couple of years ago, and I'd explained to him that this is what we're doing, and this is how the applause model is, and this is what we want to do. So then he came back to me and said that, listen, this is the one that I've been developing with Gurinder, and we want to take it forward. So then it took us some time to get the entire paperwork and all of that together. And now we are sort of creating a multi-country writers room. And so there's Gurinder and Paul, then there's Sundar, and there's a writer in New York. There's going to be a writer's room in India. There's all of us at Applause. And we are putting this together. So it's really exciting. We're very excited about it. We're excited to work with Gurinder, excited to work with Sundar. And this is going to be quite an interesting show because, coming from the land of India, a show about a seeker, who is, it's inspired from all the, the amazing Godman stories that have come out of India and in general, and also then, trying to build out a very dramatic tale. So it's an ambitious project.
So, in terms of your it's a great thing. In fact, it's a story of inspiration for any producer wanting to produce, because Sundar has a limited experience in production. So it's great. It's a great leap of faith, which should inspire other producers also to come to you.
Yeah, because what we thought was that what Sundar brings to the table versus what we are doing and what Gurinder is doing is it's a good combination of things, because again, as I say, that there is obviously there is the straightforward creative element to this, but Sundar in a way is going to be an executive producer like us. And this, the series business and the film business for that matter, I think in many ways, the role of the producer and the executive producer often gets sort of diminished or, in the glare of the drama going on and the glare of the creativity. These are very important parts, actually putting all these things together. So I think, Sundar and us in a combination with Gurinder, and as we put it all together, these are combinations that work. I am a great believer in collaboration, in combinations, in co-productions, in working with people. This is a business that requires inputs of various people. It's not, there's a lot of this thing comes about, my way or the highway. This is my idea. This is my vision. It will be on screen. Sure. There have been great directors who've done that and, gotten away with it. But when you look at the industry in its entirety, it is built on collaborative effort. And we should willingly, sort of encourage that. We should welcome that. We should seek it, actually.
Thanks for that again now. So, earlier you were just funding. Now you're looking at co-productions. You've partnered with Juggernaut, with Aditya Pitti's Inten and Juggernaut to co-produce and co-fund projects. So, but is that a direction Applause is increasingly going to take, where you look at co-production, co-funding rather than just funding?
Actually, it's an extension of what we are doing. So, in a sense, like for example, with regard to Aditya and Samar, Samar has already worked with us. The show he's produced for us, Avrodh, is going to be releasing on Sony next week. So Samar, when he left and joined Juggernaut, he reached out to me saying that, I have spoken to Aditya about this and we'd like to definitely, do work like how Applause is doing. We'd like to do something like that. So can we figure a way around doing it? So we said that, sure, let's co-produce. We're happy to do that. See, my sort of, as a goal for the industry is that we must get more money. We must attract more capital towards content creation, right? We should encourage, that money to be invested, not as debt, but as equity, as risk. That people must come forward and say that, let's create better content. It gives creators more independence. It gives them more opportunity to do this. And it also helps the ecosystem in general, because see, all boats rise with the tide. I am not in competition with anyone, right? I can definitely not be a competitor of the streamer. And I cannot be a competitor of any other creator. Because finally what happens is that the rate of consumption is so high and it's going to go only higher. Today we released, 2 weeks back, we released this show, Undeki on Sony. Everybody I know saw it over the weekend. And now everyone's on our case saying, where is season 2? But season 2 is a little away now. We've got to make it. So I think there is so much appetite and there's so much space. So we should encourage content creation. That's what we are trying to do. So when people come to us with co-funding propositions, we are happy to do it, because then one is that we are sharing the risk, we are sharing the financial burden. We can, probably, what we obviously need is like-minded sort of thinking companies, right? So, obviously we are not saying that, any kind of funding, co-funding works. We are obviously looking to work with good quality partners.
Yeah, again, a question has popped up from Hitesh Thakkar. Why is it that producers or platforms have focused on producing content involving violence, sex, and drugs, and not family content? We can answer that when we come to content regulation, but his question is about the focus is more on the edgy stuff, which is not the family drama stuff.
No, I don't think. I mean, see, there are different ways of looking at it. We've produced, shows like The Office or Mind the Malhotras or Munford Ki Binni. They are not, sex, crime, violence, drama at all. They are like, in fact, comedies. Um, that being said, I think it's different kinds of content. Family dramas is something which has been the mainstay of television in the way it got produced. So that has so much of that here that in the first phase, a lot of other genres got opportunities to explore. When you look at a show like Your Honor, for example, Your Honor is a father-son story.
Sure.
It happens to play out into a scenario like, but actually, it's the story of a father who's willing to go to any lengths to protect his son.
Sure.
I think that is as much of a family story as anything. But it takes all types. Crime, thriller, action are popular genres. Whether they have abuse or not abuse in it are just functions. These things will come in the wash. It will all sort of settle down, and there will be. I mean, finally, then other dramas will get told. I think Ekta Kapoor. Ekta does so many shows of this kind on Old Balaji, which is she does. When you look at the show that Ronit does, Kehne Ko Hum Safar Hai, that's in a sense it's a very strong drama. The one with Sakshi and Ram Kapoor
Sure.
is a very strong drama. It's not action and sex and violence at all. Um, so I think people are producing all kinds of shows. If you look at the one on the show on Amazon Panchayat, or some of the shows that TVF has produced, they are extremely strong, grounded shows and do not have sex and violence in it. So I think it's unfair to sort of, tar everything that's being done with that sort of one lens.
Yeah. So again, more questions. I mean, I hope I can get back to my conversation with you, but the questions are keeping on coming. So Sonika, who's I think worked with you in the past, said Andiki was absolutely fantastic, really well written and produced show. That's a comment, more a comment. And Mukesh has again popped up and asked, any plans to produce LGBTQ based romantic content series with a social message? And Nilakshi's, I'll come to Nilakshi once you answer Mukesh's question.
We've received some proposals, and in fact, most recently, we've got a very nice story that's come our way, which is now in early stage of writing. It's being written by I can't tell you the details, but a really pretty big writer who sort of had this idea. So that's something that we're working on. We get a few stories from time to time on this subject, around this thing. It's important to do it with sensitivity and do it well, and not end up becoming, that typical, spoofing or caricaturing of what this is. So I mean, if you get it right, we'll do it. I mean, we are looking at a few like that.
Yeah. So on documentaries, we have Virendra Sahani who's asked you, can you share some insights into documentary ROI? And Nilakshi's Sengupta is asking, would you be interested in listening to a global docu pitch?
Yeah, we'd be interested in listening to a global docu pitch. So again, the same thing, please email me. And documentary economics, again, it's new for me, as in I don't really know the detail. This is why we are trying to collaborate with a couple of international companies to understand this better. It's something I'm really interested in doing. Some of the documentaries we've seen on Amazon and Netflix have been really inspiring. It's something that I really like as a genre. I'm a big consumer of documentary myself. So I think that India is like a treasure trove, and of being able to tell Indian stories, many which can't be done fictionally, because it's tough. But I think that you can do it. You have an English/Hindi narrator. You can have multiple language dubs, and you can tell amazing stories out of India in a documentary fashion. Much like how other documentaries that we see. I mean, I look at all the stuff on the international platforms. I say, my God, this is an opportunity we're missing. We got to put our stories out there in this format. It doesn't have to be fiction. See, because what happens with fiction is that fiction is more expensive to mount. It's more complicated, and then it comes with its own sort of related problems, right? Because then we say things like this: where is the action? Where is the thrill? Where is the episodic high point? No, all of that kind of thing goes into that. But documentary is, in part information, in part entertainment, in part knowledge, and it can be mounted in a more smart manner. I think Indian documentary filmmakers should really reach out to us, and maybe we should make one sort of a consortium and go out there and do it. I'd be happy to do that.
Fantastic. So there are some more questions. Your team has rejected a proposal to you, a project. Can I, as a creator, reach out to them again to understand why, and maybe I can improve on what I create, or is a rejection a final fiat?
No, of course you can. No, I mean, we are happy to engage and discuss. The one thing that I have told my team is to try and follow two sort of operating guidelines. Is one that if something comes our way and if we don't particularly like it, there's no need to be overtly critical or judgmental about it, because it's just a personal thing. I mean, we may not like it. That doesn't make it bad, or that if we like it, it's good. It's just a thing. So that being said, we try and limit the sort of commentary around acceptance or rejection to keeping it simple. That being said, no, of course, if there is to be a further conversation, we're happy to talk. Actually, see, conversations, discussions, that's a creative process, where we've got to sort of, talk to each other and, sort of understand. Many times, written material received may not, truly express what it is, and maybe a conversation around that is possible. But again, it is a business, it is an operation. There's only that much that can happen, which is why I think if at the presenting stage, at the pitching stage, more thought, more effort, more all of that goes into it, it makes the quality of the pitch better.
Great. So there's another question which came up. How granular are you on the budget? Are you very anal about budgeting, and do you allow your production partners to make a healthy profit?
Well, it depends on what the arrangement is. So if there's an arrangement of working on a certain fee, then then that's. I mean, I'm happy. Everyone should make money in this, and you have to make the money that you're supposed to make, and that's good to go. With regard to being granular and anal about budget, I mean, honestly, money is being spent to be seen on screen. So if you see it on screen, then everyone's happy. And I think we should all budget it correctly. Like, I'm a big believer in transparent budgeting, which means that, if you wish to demand a creative fee, you must demand it. You must not hide it in line items about production or anything like that. We should work. And if the industry can work in that manner, all the better. But yeah, I mean, we are cost conscious. We are focused on getting value for money. All of those things are there.
Yeah. So I've got a whole bunch of questions I'd lined up, but because do you want to continue, or this is more about, or do you want another one?
Do you want to ask me some other questions that you wanted to ask? That we can
There's tons of them. There's tons of them, but it's been an hour and a half almost now. So let's like, we can arrange for another one if you'd like, or we can continue.
We can talk for another 10-15 minutes.
Okay, let's go ahead then.
Sure.
So this pandemic has been going on for a long time. It seems forever, and it seems like it's going to go on forever. Will it really change the way viewers live, get entertained? And the ratings were the BARC numbers were out yesterday. It shows that GECs are coming back to a certain extent. The numbers are back. So we've been consuming a lot of TV. We'd consumed a lot of Doordarshan content when it was there in the early part of the lockdown. We watched the old classical shows, etc. Because no fresh productions were being churned out. So the viewers started shifting a lot to possibly to OTTs, because that's where they were getting the fresh productions coming out. So do you think it's changed the way we are going to consume? Though yesterday's BARC numbers show that television is back, and other numbers have shown that OTT is going slightly down. News, which was really doing very well, has settled down a bit. Movies, which are doing very well, have settled down a bit. So are we going to go back to the earlier way we were consuming content, or is it going to be different going forward?
So one thing the pandemic and this lockdown has done is definitely, in India especially, exposed a giant new audience to the OTT platforms. So that has happened because, when you talk about family that are stuck in homes, that means that gives the opportunity for the grandson to get the grandmother introduced to the new platform. So that time, because otherwise in a normal living life, the older people and the middle-aged people didn't have that. I mean, there was no one there to help them to do that. And then they were anyway too busy working and doing all of that. So now this has been a forced break, which has allowed this to happen. And this is a big habit now. It's been 120 days. So they say it takes 21 days to form a habit. You're talking, something which is 5 times that number now, 6 times that number. So that's a lot. So obviously that's a good thing because, the platforms and distribution of content via the internet in a non-linear, anywhere, anytime manner is the sort of, the absolute golden age of content consumption and content creation. So that's good because that's a big upside. Obviously, television, theaters, I mean, theaters will reopen and hopefully that returns, because these are very important parts of our business, right? I don't think any one part of the business should or can replace the others. And it shouldn't happen, because honestly, and I'm being a little selfish here, but from a content creator's point of view, what you want is you want to have multiple revenue channels, right? So that then, there are different sources of revenue. If it gets monopolized into just a single source, it again becomes a sort of a stranglehold, and then it again creates a new distortion in the market, much like net neutrality, right? So if you make a movie, you release it in a theater, you get an X amount of revenue. Then you put it on TV, you get X revenue. Then you put it on a platform, you get revenue. Then you do international, you syndicate, all of that. Now, if all of this is reduced to, all the movies or all the content created is going to have just the one funnel out from 5 platforms, in a sense, it's not good for the industry. It stunts it. It reduces it rather than expands it, because a lot of revenue is lost. So I think in that sense, of course, things should return to normal in a way. TV should get back. TV should get back some degree of advertising revenue, and it
The
should sort
advertising
of.
is there, but it's they're basically bonusing, discounting is coming in a big way through bonusing.
Right, but that's.
So speaking to some TV executives, they said from August they're not going to budge. I have a session tomorrow with the MediaCom chief growth officer tomorrow, where we're going to talk about the discounts are going to stop, bonusing is going to stop, because inventory fills were very low during the when there was a lockdown, and goods were not moving. There were logistical issues, supply chain, etc. So some of the big. But what I'm getting to is that the yesterday's numbers show that television GECs are back, which are the mainstays of the which consume a lot of advertising. News was getting advertising, but it was being discounted galore.
So the thing is that, I mean, it's good that it's returning, because as you create a sense of a return to normalcy, new content production starts, all of that happen. That's a good thing. But I think what you're referring to is a slightly larger thing than just ad revenues returning or some BARC numbers showing a uptick or a downswing. I think it is that this sort of lockdown has helped create a shift in consumer behavior. It has brought a large audience in very, very close contact with the internet, right? In all its shape and form. Like I know a number of people who have got onto online ordering because of this. Because you're locked up in the house, you order online. You were doing it before, but you're doing a lot more of it now, right? So this keeping you closed in a place has allowed you to explore the world via the internet most, and you've learned a lot of new things, and that's an important behavioral shift. Now, whether all of this translates into everything else shutting and only one thing sort of benefiting, obviously not. But we're introduced to new things, we're introduced to different things, and I think it can grow from here. I think obviously, finally sport will have to return.
People will have to. Sports September is when the IPL is coming back.
Exactly. And finally, sport is something that we like to watch sport. They will have to play sport, and we will eventually throng the stadiums as well and watch it on TV and all of that. So I think all of that will happen. What maybe this pandemic will also do is that, along with this change in consumer behavior and making us more digital, more internet, will also, there's obviously, lives have changed, people's lives have changed, jobs have been lost, jobs have been got, people have survived, not survived. So there are all those changes that happen. This is a major thing. It's a major thing going on in our lives, and there is a sort of change in our thinking. A lot of people have had time to sit back and reflect about what they're doing in life and why they're doing it. So who knows? Yeah, there will be change. It's not going to be the same.
Yeah. So what does it mean for the people who are behind theaters, OTT, TV, short form, and all the other forms of content? What does it mean? What does it mean for people like you who produced for them? You said you're going to make movies. You said you're interested in documentaries. You're looking at animation.
I saw a nice image, of wild stormy seas, and it had various boats on it, and it said that different boats, same storm, right? And I think that's really true for life and for business as well. That in a way we are all in different boats, but it's in the middle of the same storm, right? And sure, so some are big giant cruisers and some are little rowboats, but it has implications. So obviously, larger companies with more staying power will make it through this. Some people may not. Even from a creating point of view, we were talking about this earlier, that if theaters don't open, then to mount a big film and to make it and then take the theatrical revenue off the table as a revenue stream it doesn't make sense, which means then it has a knockdown effect on the kind of movies that get made, then on the prices of those movies, on star prices, on, blah, blah, blah. Ditto, I'm making a whole bunch of shows, but, so I think no OTT platforms are going to require a lot more content. But if advertising doesn't return, or if there are other greater economic problems, so there are, it's hard to predict as to exactly what's going to happen. What we're trying to do now is take some measured bets, try to understand, in the short term, what's going to come up in the 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, how things are going to play out. And then we sort of review it every 3 months to just see, are we headed in the right direction? Do we pull the trigger? Do we not? That kind. I think this is a time to be sensible.
So, another question, in the last month, we've heard murmurs of OTT getting regulated. They've said industry should self-regulate, but there's no unity amongst the streamers to adhere to the Digital Complaints Council, which has been set up, etc. 2 or 3 of them are not adhering to. They're saying we don't agree to this. So you had problems with Hasmukh, where some lawyers filed a PI against the way you depicted lawyers, etc. So and there's been a public groundswell almost against what they say is freedom, too much of freedom of creative expression. So where do you think it's going to head? Because while the people in power are saying there needs to be more regulation, if it goes the TV way, where you have your pricing regulation, you have your content regulation, where so and that's what everyone, all the leaders are saying. That's whether it's an Uday, whether it's NP doesn't speak too much, but he's quite behind the scenes professional who works very hard. But Uday has come out openly and said that regulation is totally burdening the industry today. So if that happens to the streamers, what's going on?
But there are 2 regulations at play currently. One is, the whole, the regulation that surrounds the way you do your business with regard to pricing and distribution, right, all of that, which has been going on in the TV industry from a long time, from 2004, and in various ways. So that's a separate thing. With regard to content regulation, the thing is that, I think TV has this self-regulation.
Yeah, so that's the route. That's the route. Like the Advertising Standards Council is there, etc. They want to. There's a thing being said on the IMI, but
so you have
everyone is adhering to it, and therefore they have 100 days to adhere to it. We have another webinar coming on content regulation on OTT in the next 10-15 days.
Right.
So
the thing on that is that there are different sort of points of view on this, as to whether you should have self-regulation, whether you should have external regulation, or whether you should not have regulation at all. In the US and in other places, they have the age guidelines that they follow, where they do parental recommendation, 18 plus, whatever, and they leave a lot of choice in the consumer's hand, right? I think they warn you, this contains abuse, violence, and skin and whatever. So watch at your own discretion. Many times when I'm watching a show and my daughter walks in, I immediately pause it, ask her to leave the room, and continue watching. It is expected of a evolved society to do that, as compared to be spoon-fed that this is right for you in the right dose and this is what you must get. Honestly, the thing with any kind of creativity is that one is that it finds its own level, because finally audiences have to, audiences are the biggest censors, right? Audiences are the biggest critics, and audiences are the biggest regulators of everything. And society finds that level of what is or not acceptable. That's why we call them socially acceptable norms, right? So they may not be laws, but they are socially acceptable norms. And that is what society decides, and society taste changes from time to time. So what would have been completely uncool 20 years ago is okay, right? 30 or 50 years ago, working women used to be somebody that stood out. Today it's commonplace, right? I mean, this whole, I remember in the 70s and 80s that it was supposed to be such a thing. Now it's nothing. Women smoking, it's not such a big deal. It used to be a big deal. So I think those are social tastes. Censorship of any kind is is something that I never sort of advocate, because I think that is that's not the right thing to do. I think society will find its way. I mean, you need all kinds of voices in a society. You need voices that are pro-establishment. You need voices that are anti-establishment. That's what helps keep a society on an even keel. It helps push the conversation forward. It helps drive the entire evolution forward. So I think that's the way it should be. Within that context, now how everyone gets together, when you bring up the case of Hasmukh and the lawyer, I mean, we took it to court. It did go end up in court, and then the judge itself, sort of dismissed it for being frivolous, because it was frivolous. Because the point there was that there was this lawyer who cheats the character, and the character therefore then comes on stage and says that this lawyer cheated me, and therefore I have no trust in lawyers. By doesn't mean that we are casting aspersion on the lawyer community. By that logic, if you have a corrupt cop, it means all cops are crooked. If you have a bad politician, it means all politicians are bad. That way, if you have a bad journalist, it means all journalists are bad. It doesn't make any sense, right? And in any case, how does it, if indeed all of this content was so impressionable and it was doing all of that, then Hindi cinema has spent 30 years telling stories about crooked cops and crooked politicians, in which a hero then kills everyone and succeeds. So has that happened in real life? It hasn't, right? So it's not as impressionable as people make it out to be.
Yeah.
So I think we should, as an evolving society, I think there should be more freedom to speak up, and I think society finds its level. There are courts, there is legal recourse to all of this. I mean, I think if somebody goes and does something outrageous, I think you won't be able to look at it. I think a groundswell will prevent viewership of that. I don't think we are so stupid as society that we are unable to, decide what is good or bad on our own.
Yeah. So, some of your shows are launching in the next month and a half, or maybe 30, 25 days. Right. So a little insight into what's planned.
The big one coming up now. Sorry, the big one coming up now is Avrodh, which comes next Friday, July 31st on Sony Live. So this is actually from Shiv Arur and Rahul Singh's book, India's Most Fearless. So this is a story from there. This is about the Uri attack and the surgical strike that India did as retaliation. So I know a movie had come out on the same subject, a fictional tale. What we've done is we've taken the book, and this is Mike Tango, the major who did this, his authentic account of how this surgical strike was done. And we built a larger social, political, military environment and universe around it. So it's almost like, think of it like a West Wing meets sort of a Homeland meets an action thriller. So it's that kind of a universe, right? So what we have is we have everything that happened in the PMO, and from a political worldview, how did we react to the Uri attack? How did the army and the armed forces behave in that manner? How did the media behave in that manner? And what about society at large? What about Kashmir? What about the cross-border terrorism? And what about people? So, and we're sort of building out that universe. It's such a subject very close to my heart. I mean, I think homeland security is a very important thing. Sure. It also, it's a thing we should tell more stories about. So that's one. Later in the month comes Hostages, season 2, which is complete. So that will be a good one to do. Season 1 did really well. So
is it deviating from season 1, or is it taking?
No, it's the same. The story goes forward. So at the end of season 1, they kidnapped the chief minister and got away with it. So season 2 tells you now what happened.
Okay.
Okay. Later in the month comes Scam, which is the story of Harshad Mehta, which is based on Sucheta Dalal's book, directed by Hansal Mehta. So this is really, we're very excited about this, because this is our first biopic in that sense. And it's been done with a lot of attention to detail. It's a very colorful period of Indian history. Harshad Mehta, the big bull, still remains the greatest guy. So that's will come later. And then there's a whole bunch of new things in development. So we've got Fauda in development. We were hoping to start production of Fauda, but now we've got to wait to see when that happens. We've got Luther going to happen. We've got Seeker that's being developed with Gurinder and Sundar. We're doing a spaghetti western set in the 60s called Donali. That's going to happen. There's another show we're doing with Nikhil Advani. So that's another one that's going to happen, being shot on location in Rajasthan. So there's quite a lot of activity actually.
What happened to Uran Patolas? Has that?
Uran Patolas is complete. We are trying to find the right platform for it. So we are in conversation with a few. So hopefully that should happen.
Okay. So Luther is what I'm looking forward to, and Fauda, really.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of the writing and all of that is complete. So now we are just waiting. I mean, this lockdown is actually, in a sense, has put a little bit of dampener in the whole production, this thing. So we've got to wait to see. And we've got to get back to work carefully. We've got to go back. We've got to take adequate care.
So when do you think you'll start? Because the TV guys have started. You can actually, you can go to Umargaon like Siddhartha has gone, where he's totally housed his all the crew, the cast, He's got a hotel over there. He's got 150
I
rooms.
think it works. I think it works for TV. They're able to do that given the nature of the daily soap opera and producing that. I think for some of the series we are doing, it's a little harder because we are talking about a lot of locations, a different kind of actor. We don't have that ongoing, sort of schedules.
Okay.
So things move around. So when you're trying to when Nagesh has got to complete City of Dreams season 2, he's got some 40 locations in Bombay to go to. So that becomes more complicated to do. So I think we'll have to figure something like further will have to be shot in Kashmir. So those are more complicated. But we're trying to figure it out as to what's the best way to do this.
Great. It's been a pleasure chatting with you as always. And thank you for your time, and thank you to the audience for being attentive for so long. And look forward to speaking to, 1 second, there's another, Nilakshi is asking another question. I thought we'll go. But what's happening to kids content? Any development happening there? Before we go, yeah.
We haven't done anything yet, specific or significant. Maybe it's question, maybe nothing's come our way and we haven't really given it that focus. But it's a thing to do. I mean, definitely a thing to do. I think other people are doing a lot of good work in this in any case. But we have to look at it.
Yeah, so there's Josh7 asking for your email address in the chat. If you can write to him, you can write to him specifically. There are 3 or 4 people who've asked. You can actually go in the chat and give it to them. Then there's anonymous attendee. He's again being a little cheeky. Are your shows more geared for a male audience?
Geared for a male audience? No, not really. I mean, it's not like that. I mean, I think everyone saw Andeki and everyone liked Andeki. Your Honor, I mean, I don't think anything that we've made is specifically male. It's not male shows. We've got very strong women characters. They're just human stories. There's no such thing, that there's no such thing as a woman show or a man show. They're just stories.
Yeah. So, which of your shows, before I go now, and I'm not taking any more questions. Thank you, guys. But which of your shows has really kicked you in the gut and made you want to watch it again, possibly a second time? Apart from your edits, in your.
I know I love all our shows, and
I expected that.
I particularly like all the shows that we've made, but things that have really sort of stood out or sort of been really quirky and sharp and smart have been Criminal Justice, the very first one that came out. Most recently, Andeki. Your Honor, really cool. The Office, I really love The Office. I love the Indian version of Office that we've made. I wish all of India also loved it as much as I do. I thought Hasmukh was really crazy.
I thought Hasmukh was crazy. I couldn't stop watching it.
And I love to watch that, many times.
I love what we did with the character. I mean, I didn't expect V to come out that effective, but he did a great.
He did an outstanding job. And everyone in that, all the characters around him as well, Ranveer, everyone was quite outstanding.
Ranveer was brilliant too.
This new show of ours, Avrodh, coming up next week, I've seen so many times and I really like it. Scam, you guys are going to love. I hope you're going to love. It's really
I hope. I was there during the Scam very much. I'd met Harshad also in my time in the 90s.
Oh, wow, okay. So then you'll know what we've done with it.
But there's another character called Manu Manik, who was a bear.
Yes, of course. Actually,
I don't know whether you're talking about Manu, he and Harshad
they're all there.
Okay.
They're all there with suitable, whatever tweaks to characters and all, but everyone's there. It's quite authentic.
One of the few guys was lucky to meet Manu Manik in those days. He never met anyone, and he went into a battle against Dhirubhai Ambani, and he pushed his share price down. I don't know if that's coming out in the 80s. And then Dhirubhai Ambani won.
Right.
So there was a bear cartel, there was a bull cartel. Anyway, it's been fun talking with you. It's always very informative. And thank you to the audience. And until next time, be safe. And there's going to be a lot more opportunities like this, I hope. We'll try talking for a couple of months. Thanks, Sameer. Goodbye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. See you soon.
Bye.